reason for the red splash was to play counterflux, be able to counter opposing win conditions.
Right. You originally had the blue-white elixir deck and said, hey, wouldn't it be great if I just always could counterflux your elixir? So you're right, this is level 1. Won a local PTQ, at least in my area, as recent as I think 2 weeks ago, defeating blue-white in the finals. Unsurprising, doing exactly what it was intended to do.
Both of these players are in the top 20 of our Season 1 standings for the Charlotte Invitational. Jared is the 18th ranked player currently with the amount of points that he has, and CVM, of course, our 5th ranked player. Both these players are well known on the Open Series. Jared has an elite SCG IQ win under his belt, which is basically almost an Open. That's the step right below a Classic.
All right.
And he won, I think it was a 130-person tournament in upstate New York with the Jedi Jund, as we called it at the time, the white splash of Jund during last summer.
Sure.
So he was pretty well known for that build. It became pretty popular on the website. And CVM, of course, mostly known for his beard, but also well known for being a talented magician.
Well, this could still be the day he shaves the beard. He is 6-1, so not out of contention.
That's right.
That's when he wins a tournament, right?
When he wins a tournament, he will shave the beard, but not until that point. And as you can see, he has not won a tournament for quite some time.
The beard is, it's getting quite...
It's glorious, is what it is. He's becoming not his elemental token anymore. Like, his elemental token has a glorious beard, and he is so far gone from that he is moving into mountain man status. We're almost gonna have to make the 5/5 the Feud Killer's Verdict token pretty soon for that beard.
So let's look at blue-white red control. So originally it was just for the counterfluxes. There were a couple other splashes. He's adopted the Is It Charm splash as well. He has a turn burn. What's important though is he has not adopted the Assemble the Legion splash. It's in the board, but not the main. That splash was actually just for this matchup.
As we see, Jared won the die roll. He is going to lead off with Steam Vents, and Chris goes Swamp Thoughtseize.
Well, Thoughtseize is pretty much the best card against control decks.
It's not so good when your opponent has 3 detention spheres, however. There's not a lot of options.
Unless Chris has 2 more Thoughtseizes, that Underworld Connections in his hand is not safe. What he's going to probably do instead is he's probably still take a sphere, but what this means is Jared doesn't have any card draw in his hand. So in this situation, Black, they either clear the way for an Underworld Connections, or they take your card draw.
Yeah, the awkward thing for Chris here is that many of his threats depend on your opponent not having a detention sphere and overloading the other answers. And so, for example, Pack Rat is really good for that. Underworld Connections, most of the answers that Blue, White, Red has can't deal with Underworld Connections. Chris has both of those cards in his hand.
Right, his Pack Rat and Connections. This is a nightmare hand to look to see on the other side.
And there's a Pack Rat. We'll see if Chris immediately goes for it. I don't think he will. He has the option to wait a little bit, but he may just go for it here if he doesn't have another play. Yeah, it looks like he didn't get another
He has so many detention spheres. There's no reason to...
Did he draw the 4th?
No, he drew a Verdict.
Okay, he drew a
Verdict.
Oh,
another Pack Rat answer, of course.
As we see, Chris misses his 3rd land drop, and that means Jared gets to play a Jace Architect of Thought without any impeding creatures on the board, and reveals Divination, Last Breath, and Mutavault. Chris is going to have to split the pile. He does have a Hero's Downfall in his hand, so he'll be able to deal with it if he so chooses, as he starts off by separating Divination in one pile with Mutavault and Last Breath in the other.
2 cards or 2 cards. Yep. Jared can pick which way. I mean, what he really wants to find is land, so that one has 1 land. It's not too bad. Last Breath's also not dead here. Chris, by the way, was on a mulligan, I believe, to 5 this game.
Sure.
So,
and he did not find the 3rd land again. Did find another Hero's Downfall, so if he wants to, he can use it. If he finds the land next turn, he'll be able to take out a Jace and then be able to answer a future Elspeth or something like that. As we see, Jared Boettcher plays a Temple of Deceit, scrying right now to the top, let's say.
Yeah, he kept on top, and this is a really... Jared's pretty far ahead. He actually used Jace there. He plussed Jace. That's a pretty aggressive line. Jace will get downfall then. He could have had the more cards.
Yeah, he didn't have the counterspell in his hand, so I guess that's a little bit aggressive. Jared does not have the turn 6 Planeswalker follow-up, so Chris is actually not under any real pressure here to do anything, and the black deck is able to amass a huge amount of cards if he's able to get lands at any point.
Yeah, and I think the problem is that Jared has already had time to assemble answers. You see counterfluxes, detention spheres. I like that Chris waited before playing the Underworld Connections to make sure he'd still get a 2-for-1 once he played it.
Yeah, assuming it doesn't get countered here, then that's absolutely, it's a 4-drop, absolutely. Jared does have a myriad of answers in his hand, but Chris only knows about the 2 detention spheres, which is what he's really concerned about.
Yeah.
He wants to trade the 1 card for the 1 card, but draw a card in response.
Yeah, I think he's going to let Chris have the connections. He would like to save counterfluxes for Thought Seizes, actually. Those are the scariest cards in the matchup for him.
As we see, he leaves up counterflux mana in order to detention sphere.
And a draw there. The thing is that Jared has been bought enough time here that he can afford to just wait around for Sphinx's Revelation, especially game 1. I mean, the idea is that he wants to cast a Revelation for 4 or more on a board without Underworld connections. And if he can do that, if there's no Underworld connections and there's no Erebos, then he's in the clear.
This is the second verse, same as the first. We play another 4 mana up Underworld connections. This time it gets counterfluxed, though.
Yeah, he has 2 counterfluxes now,
okay,
so
sure.
It's not as precious of a resource.
Digging for lands now. We're going to divinate. A card that is actually going to be in Born of the Gods. I'm pretty excited for that with some spectacular new art.
Yeah, I really liked the art on it, which I'd seen there.
It's so good. It's Saimidi, the queen of Akroas, or Akros.
Right, she's half
on
of Annex and Saimidi.
Half of Anthrax and Cyanide, and she's in a temple. Praying to Kuranos, I think, is what the flavor was.
All right, I'll go with it. I
saw
think
that
so.
in Magic Arcana. As we see, Nightveil Spectre is going to try to hit the board.
Well, yeah, I mean, Chris knows that Jared has a last breath. He gave it to him back off that Jace earlier. Jared's not even using it yet. That's the best part.
And he's got the Quicken as well as Supreme Verdict in his hand if he so chooses to use it. I don't anticipate this Nightveil Spectre is going to get in for any damage, as there's a myriad of answers in Jared's hand, and one of them is Last Breath.
Yeah, he just wanted to see if Chris was going to play anything else. Maybe he could actually quicken a Supreme Verdict. He's playing he's so far ahead that Jared he's extracting maximum value out of all his cards there. Rather than just Last Breathing right away, hey, let's see if we can get more value.
As we see, Grey Merchant of Asphodel comes into play. Got to start somewhere, and Chris starts off with 2 damage. Jared now at 18, Chris at 23. He's got a long way to go, though. He does have another Grey Merchant in his hand as well as a Thoughtseize, so wouldn't be a bad place to start as the 2/4 gets in for 2 damage.
This is such a great spot for a control deck to be. Jared has Turn Burn. Jared has he has Celestial Flare, and yet when his opponent attacks, he takes the 2.
And what's going to happen here is we're going to quicken a Supreme Verdict in response to a Grey Merchant trigger.
So the drain is for
devotion
0. Huge play by Jared.
And there he finds the Sphinx's Revelation. I'm sure many of you have been in the hard lock of the blue-white control.
Sphinx's Revelation for 6 doesn't actually say win the game, but it's pretty darn close.
It's pretty close. As we see a Jace, Architect of Thought, trigger, and find 3 lands, probably going to take the pile with 2 lands.
That's a perfect Jace right now, actually.
It really is.
The one thing that he has to do, and this is what I was saying about those counterfluxes, is that Jarrett needs to protect his Revelation with counter spells. And so you see there, Chris actually does have a Thoughtseize.
He does, and he used one of the counterfluxes earlier. Does he have another?
Oh, is it?
I don't think he does.
Maybe a turn burn, so that might, he might have let it get exposed.
It looks like the Thoughtseize got exposed, or exposed to Thoughtseize there.
Yep, he can Revelate for 2 in response.
It's not
He's
that
gonna
good.
Do it.
I mean, he's still pretty far ahead, but managed to find a pressure point here.
Yep, Supreme Verdict Jace. See, I'm not sure how much I like Revelationing for 2 there. I would just almost let him take the card. In the case that you brick, he gets your next best card too.
Chris sees Jace, Supreme Verdict, Detention Sphere, Turn Burn, Celestial Flare, and Plains. That is a list of cards that the mono black deck is not particularly good at handling.
Yeah, he's going to take Jace and take the other Jace down too.
Got to prevent Jared from drawing any more cards, takes all of the remaining ways to draw cards, trying to exhaust Jared's resources.
Well, he's got to win before Jared draws a Sphinx's Revelation. So he's going to take any card that can potentially find Sphinx's Revelation. That said, it's hard. Jared's at 18, and Chris can't seem to land a creature on the board, and he knows that, what is his next 1, 2, 3, 4 creatures aren't landing either.
Yep, and Jared's the one with the clock on the board as well. He's got the 2 Mutavaults coming in, and Chris falls to 17. And so Chris can only pass, even though he drew a Pack Rat with 3 mana. Can't really use it because he knows that there's a Turn Burn and a Celestial Flare. There's a million cards across the table from him.
And he's got a slump. He's in a slump in his chair, and he sees that play. Jared shocks to go to 16 and says
the
go.
Turn. Yeah.
I wonder what you top deck.
There's bad things happening, as you can see by Chris's body language with his hands
like,
there.
Oh, is that? Oh, why'd you shock there? You shocked for land number 12. That's
weird.
peculiar.
We're probably going to see a Sphinx's Revelation for 9 at the end of the turn, as we see, looks like Desecration Demon is going to resolve, and that is for 9. Might as well be a Fireball for 17.
Yeah. I mean, you can. Chris at that point can concede. He can wait to see how Jared wins. Though to be fair, if Jared's heads up, he actually won't show the elixir. He'll just take a. What I would do in the situation, I would take a Jace plus the Jace, ult it, take like Chris's Desecration Demon and beat him up with it, and then not even show what my win con was.
Sure.
And also to do that, it's very minimal information. And it takes about 15 minutes, which you might still need that.
Sure. As we see that Jared does have 1 Elspeth, does have 1 elixir, does not have the Aetherling. So
He actually has.
he does have the Aetherling.
Yep.
Oh, there it is. It was hiding over there. So he's got all 3 win
It
conditions.
was hiding in that pesky creatures column. Who puts cards in that?
Especially in the blue-white-red control deck. As we move to sideboards, speaking of the blue-white-red control deck, what do we got over there?
Well, the reason to play red, as I touched on a little bit before the match started, is because people felt like blue-white-red actually had a lot of trouble with the mono-black deck. So he plays Assemble the Legion in the sideboard. Now, it's not a be-all, end-all trump, because it can be duressed, it can be thought seized. Those are the best cards against you already. But what it does do that the other cards don't is that if you resolve it, it wins. Black's particularly bad at getting enchantments off the battlefield. So he'll board in Assemble the Legions for sure. You usually board in Negate, and that's not to negate, it can negate Underworld Connections, but it's just to protect, it's to negate thought seizes, really. Yeah. He has 2 Archangel of Thunes. Those are possible to board in. I actually like boarding them in a lot of the time in the matchup because your opponent will be cutting so much of their removal. I want more high-end things to top deck. And the last thing he will board in is probably Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle is good against, it's acceptable against Erebos, it's good against Packrat, and it's great against Underworld Connections.
As we see over on Chris's sideboard, he's got fairly stock numbers here: 3 Dark Betrayal, 2 Erebos, 3 Duress, 3 Lifebane Zombie, 2 Doomblade, and 2 Farika's Cure. The Ereboses are almost certainly going to come in, as are the Duresses. The Lifebane Zombies are a little bit interesting. I've seen people bring them in. I've seen people not bring them in. Certainly if Jared brings in the Archangels, they're going to be great. But even as just a 3/1 Intimidate creature, they're perfectly serviceable.
Yeah, and you usually do board them in, and that's just because of what else you have in your deck. So 3 Devour Fleshes come out, 1 Ultimate Price comes out, 2 Farika's Cures come out. That's 6 cards already. You only have 2 Erebos and 3 Duress here, so okay, well, we need a 6th card. Let's go for a Lifebane Zombie. And then the question becomes, do you like Lifebane Zombie or Desecration Demon more? Who would you rather tap out for? They both get around Last Breath. Azorius Charm's better against the Demon, and your opponent might have Archangels. There's a good case to be made for turning the demons into the remaining Lifebanes.
Yeah, that's perfectly serviceable, especially because Desecration Demon gets chump blocked by an Elspeth token every turn.
Right.
Whereas the zombie certainly doesn't.
Right, the zombie's more or less unblockable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, no, you can't even, you cannot Mutavault block it, right? Because
Nope.
it's not a robot, it's just
not.
colorless.
Absolutely. Now the problem, of course, being that Jared has red in his deck, so he does have access to Izzet Charm, which Chris saw.
Yeah, so maybe against red you want to stick with the demons. That's a pretty good point.
It's pretty close. It's 6-1, half dozen the other. What would you guys do at home? Tweet at us, SCG Live. Which one would you rather have in this matchup, Desecration Demon or Lifebane Zombie? I think on the play, I'd rather have the 3-drop. It might be different. You might want the more powerful card on the draw.
I know against straight blue-white, I would prefer to have the zombies, but the point you bring up with Izzet Charm is a pretty good one. What I like about Demon is that I don't want Izzet Charms killing my 3/1s. I may go with the demons, actually.
Yeah, he's got 2 Izzet Charms. He's got 3 Azorius Charms, 2 Last Breaths, a Celestial Flare, a Turn Burn as his instant speed removal. Not to mention, of course, the Quicken. They could speed up pretty much anything. And so we'll see if Chris is able to recover from being down a match. The thing about this Mono Black Devotion deck is it can look anemic at times, especially when it's stuck on mana like Chris was game 1. But it's also got some of the best draws in the format.
Right.
Packrat not at its best in this matchup, as blue-white control and blue-white-red control have a ton of answers. They can answer an early Packrat with Last Breath, or Izzet Charm, or Turn Burn. They can answer a late one with Detention Sphere and Supreme Verdict.
The way you play Packrat in this matchup is kind of interesting. What you do is you play one on turn 2, because why not? And you hit him for 1 a bunch. And then when you get to having 6 lands in play, you threaten end step, make 2 Packrats, untap, make 2 Packrats, swing for 15.
Out of nowhere, sure.
Yeah, so if you get them below 15, you can kill them. So then they suddenly have to do awkward things like Supreme Verdict to your 1 pack rat, and then you just never make any more.
Right.
But you don't actually, the whole like turn 2 make a pack rat, if you do that, you don't turn 3 make another pack rat. That's pretty suspect.
We're here in round 8 of 10 of the Standard Open. Ruben Bressler alongside Matthias Hunt here at SCG Baltimore. Follow along the action at home on Twitter, hashtag SCGBALT. Watching the 5th ranked and 18th ranked players in the Star City Games Players Championship race for the first season here. CVM's actually been moving up quite a bit in the standings. He started in, I believe, 7th at the beginning of the year and has picked up several points just from IQs and then picked up a couple more points in Indianapolis 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, Jared picking up most of his points, I believe, in last year in Legacy, actually, as a sneak and show player. Doing well in Standard today, though.
Absolutely, yeah. He's a very solid player no matter what format he's in, but he certainly made his bones making 2nd place at Grand Prix DC. Falling to Owen in the finals.
And the very next week, taking down the Legacy Open.
And then the very next week, taking down the Legacy Open. A pretty good back-to-back for Jared that was only overshadowed by a slightly different back-to-back from Owen Turnwald. But certainly a very, very good player, rising in the ranks among the Open Series elite. I would not be surprised to see both of these players in the final 16 at the end of the year. Brad, by the way, Brad Nelson is, we've just gotten word, is undefeated. He is probably going to be able to draw in.
Yeah, at 8-0, I would expect him to be able to draw in. There are some things that can go wrong there. Maybe some players want to play for the top seed. But Brad playing the Saito blue-white build today.
With the black in the sideboard for Dark Betrayal, and I think he's playing Doomblade. Is that right?
I believe there is a 1 of Doomblade. But
as we see, action is underway here. 2 temples are going to start things off, and Chris finds Duress.
This is why the matchup is so hard for blue-white and blue-white-red after board, is there's just so much duress. He covers up, covers up a land.
So he can't choose that one. Might as well cover it up because he can't choose it. There are 2 lands there, and it's the only blue source. He doesn't want to get encroached.
It's probably going to be the Divination or the Jace.
Yep.
Chris will take
the 2 card advantage sources really are Divination and Jace. Azorius Charm can draw a card, but
that's not
a card is not really advantage. It's just cycling. And of course, there's the Supreme Verdict, which Mono Black can deal with. I mean, in other ways by just overloading the board.
Yeah, Jared has no answer to an Erebos, no answer to an Underworld Connections. You do see that there's connections in VanMeter's hand. Actually, 3 of them in VanMeter's hand.
I see. Oh, so he's hoping for not 3 detention spheres again.
Yeah,
which he
actually,
sees.
he did see 3 detention spheres last game.
Yep. And so he sees a hand that does not have 3 detention spheres.
I have said one of the things I get scared of in this matchup when I play blue-white is that if my opponent has a hand of 3 lands, duress, connections, I feel like I just lose no matter what I have.
Right.
And Chris's hand is so close to that.
It's very close. He's got double connections. He left another land on top, so he'll be able to go turn 3 and turn 4 if he wants. Should this one get Is It Charmed, for example.
Yeah, it does not. It's going to stick.
But it does not. It doesn't. And that's Azorius Charm off the top from blue, white, red. So he's got 2 of those, and he's going to cycle the first one, does Jared, who does find the 3rd land. So he's actually going to be able to play his lands on time, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, he'll get to Divination here. So Jared actually will get to, he'll get to play. His cards are going to, he's going to get to draw cards. The question is if you can actually keep pace with all these Underworld Connections. It's difficult, but possible.
And he finds and Assemble the Legion on top.
So he can fight on a different axis
now. He can.
now.
So he's got the Assemble the Legion. He's got, looks like 2 lands. One of them's a temple, one of them's a Sacred Foundry.
Yeah.
And so should Chris, sort of rest on his card advantage engine, think it's good.
He might just find that he gets beaten up by soldiers.
He might just get buried under an army of Max Browns. The new human token.
He's the red, white haste human, isn't he?
He's just a human. Actually, it's a soldier made by Assemble the Legion, but I don't think anything makes humans red. And I know Gather the Townsfolk.
But he's a red, white haste soldier.
The Assemble the Legion token is a red, white haste soldier.
Okay.
Yes.
There's also, so you could be an Elspeth soldier too.
You could.
Depends. Right.
Whether you have a
guild or not.
More soldiers than humans in Standard, as Jared plays the temple as we anticipated on his turn. Chris is going to keep his card advantage engine going, keep digging. Found a 3rd connections. Not really what he wanted to find.
Yeah, I mean, this is good for Jared. Now here there is a concern here, is that good. Fortunately, he has the Azorius Charm. I was going to say Chris could find a negate. And he does
awesome.
have double blue. Chris is going to get some bad news here.
Oh, no. Oh, dear. And he sees no white creatures, but he does see Elspeth and Assemble the Legion, which make white creatures.
Surprise! We have a new game plan.
Sadly.
It's playing big unanswerable things.
Yep.
And he sees the writing on the wall. This assemble is going to happen. Yeah, this is why the red splash. This is one of the best things the red splash can do in this matchup.
And Jared uses a land he found on top to drop Assemble the Legion. So,
all right. And he can't, there is no way in Chris's 75 to get that thing off the board. He does not play
Absolutely
Ratchet
not.
Bomb. So
he has to race it. He has a gray merchant and he has his card advantage.
he's got to find more gray merchants.
Got to find more gray merchants and got to find
I think
more
he's
unblockable guys. I
think he
guess.
just, well, he knows about Supreme Verdicts. That's the problem. I would say normally, let's run out the Gray Merchant as a blocker. Let's get some attacking going. But he knows that Jared has a Verdict. So he has to play around Verdict while still keeping damage going. And I like what he's done here. He knows there's no Detention Sphere at the moment. Well, let's draw more cards.
Yep. I think that Erebos is a reasonable place to be here now that he's got the 4 Devotion in play already on the Underworld connections.
Yeah, 5/7's good. It's going to be held off. It won't be very difficult for Jared to hold it off with Elspeth and Assemble.
But it'll help hold off Sphinx's Revelation.
Yes, it'll stop
via
life
resetting
gain,
the race, which is a big deal.
Which is big.
In a pinch, it can be
Absolutely.
used as greed if he needs a 3rd card or a 4th if he plays the other Underworld connections.
Yeah, I'm guessing that it's the 5/7 indestructible, and like more importantly, the no life gain that would be helpful.
The game plan now is find another Gray Merchant.
Yes,
Because
and then play
he's gonna,
lots of them.
Yeah, he's going to probably play the other Underworld connections because even though the Assemble isn't really a beatable card, he can race it. But he needs a very specific set of cards to do it.
3 connections going, all you have to do is draw 2 Gray Merchants and it's game. Obviously, by playing all 3 of them, you're making yourself dead to Detention Sphere, but at the same time, you're kind of already dead to Detention Sphere. If you Detention Spheres these 2 connections, Chris isn't winning the race.
And so we see Elspeth come down making more soldiers.
Yep. Yeah, let's go ahead and make ourselves real dead to Detention Sphere. So,
I mean, you kind of have to at this point.
It's your out.
It's your out, and luckily for him, Jared does not have a Detention Sphere. All he has is targeted elimination. He has, targeted 1-for-1 elimination in Celestial Flare.
yeah, well, right now, we have 6 black mana symbols. Jared, actually, he has a 2-turn clock, so he can put Jared down to 10 with this Life Bane zombie, and then if Jared doesn't Verdict, next turn he can attack with Life Bane and play Gray Merchant, and that would be a drain for 8. That would be lethal. So
Yeah,
Jared's locked into Verdicting next turn.
He can just attack here, put Jared to 10, play the Gray Merchant, put Jared to 3, and then any drawn Gray Merchant will win the game, assuming no counterspell, which we know Jared doesn't have.
Yeah, second Gray Merchant will win. If he just swings Life Bane, he doesn't even need the second one. He can win with just the first. But I mean, first you want to check, see if he actually hit the second one.
Right.
Why go through the trouble if you just have the win?
Doesn't look like he has it. Remember, there is a Supreme Verdict in Jared's hand, so if Jared decides to wipe the board, he's going to need the Gray Merchant to attack.
Okay, here's something else he can do. He can hit Jared to 10, play the 3rd connections, and then next turn, he just, with his lands, can play Life Bane Merchant, and it kills him.
That's pretty good.
So,
I like it.
Yeah, I think that's a strategy I want to go in.
That's the strategy here is just play another. Oh.
Yeah, I would have played another connections.
Well, Chris kind of wants to gain some life here. He doesn't want to just be dead.
This is good, but Jared's at 2, and we don't actually have a way to deal the final 2. So it's risky.
It is quite risky, as he is probably going to get Supreme Verdicted this turn.
Yeah. I mean,
several tokens come into the battlefield. Although Jared's at 2 and he has a Mutavault is the other thing. So Supreme Verdict, but he knows the Celestial Flare.
He can post-combat he can make Elspeth tokens after Verdict. Sure. So
and he also knows about the Celestial Flare, I believe.
Yeah, there's a flare that the Mutavault's no good.
I still think that we're on Gray Merchant or bust here.
I think we'd become on Gray Merchant or bust because we played the Gray Merchant there.
Yeah. Had he played more black mana symbols, we might not have been.
Yeah, like I said, what you'd have to do is instead just play a 3rd connections and the next turn go connections Gray Merchant, drain for 9, and it would connections Gray Merchant. No, it'd be drained for 11. It would be enough. right.
So if he had waited on it.
If he'd waited on it, it would be lethal this turn.
So now he needs to find a Gray Merchant on top probably to be able to do it.
I think it's just Gray Merchant that he needs to find.
Yep.
Yeah, that's
no targeted burn spells, no Sign in Bloods in this deck.
He has Night Veil in his hand, and that could do it if there's no answer.
Draws a Thoughtseize, so Chris is going to go to 13 almost certainly this turn, probably down to 11 actually, and then it's going to be so many 1/1s in play.
First, see if you draw Gray Merchant, and then try to Thoughtseize away a counterspell and Gray Merchant him. If you don't, then you try to use Thoughtseize to push through
the Night Veil Spectre.
Yeah, he has a Hero's Downfall for Elspeth, but there's really no point. Elspeth's not increasing the clock any. If Elspeth gets to 7, we might, I guess we might downfall it. But
as we see, both Underworld Connections drew Swamps this turn for Chris
no
VanMeter.
Gray, so that's going to change. That'll change things. We're going to have to try to hit him with this 2/2, 2/3 flyer.
And we see Thoughtseize. Jared is going to be down to, well, both of those are pretty good, actually.
He's got to well, he doesn't, I would take the Jace.
Yeah, you have to take the Jace, but the Celestial Flare actually
doesn't stop the Night Veil because you can swing with Mutavault too.
Doesn't stop the Night Veil, yeah.
Just just suicide the Mutavault on in, and you're fine.
All right.
And to be fair, though, it means if Jared draws, say, a second flare,
and we can also attack with this Pack Rat.
Yeah, here's another guy who can join the attack.
So here's a guy, yay.
Yeah, I think we're still fine. It looks like Chris will get this.
It's very close. I mean, there are lots of outs in Jared's deck. He's got more Detention Space. Yeah. He's got more Supreme Verdicts.
Plains isn't one of them.
That's right. Those beautiful white-bordered plains are not going to help you here.
They're matched, though. I didn't realize his lands are matched. I would like if they're white-bordered and unmatched.
Those are classy. Those are... are those the Portal 3 Kingdoms ones?
They're not one of the regular set ones. They may be they're like Guru or P3K or... They're one of the fancy white-bordered ones. I mean, he is a legacy player at heart, right? You'd expect his lands to cost upward of, more than the rest of the cards in his deck.
Yeah, of course. When the least expensive cards in your deck are your commons and not your basic lands. That's where I like to be.
I mean, when your basic lands are more expensive than your Elspeths, that's
true.
Good.
In comes 6 1/1s. CVM deciding how he wants to proceed here. Can't really block one.
Yep.
Lest Celestial Flare get you.
I mean, I think what Jared's just crossing his fingers that Chris only attacks with Night Veil.
Yeah.
That's not a good out to be playing too.
CVM, I think, knows that the Celestial Flare is there. So he could even play around a second one by activating the Mutavault and attacking with that. As we see Erebos.
Sure. Well, I think you start by swinging. If I'm Chris, I would. Let's see if we can just win outright before we... Yeah. Mutavault.
Yep. And they're all going to come in just to play around both.
That'll do.
And that'll go. Wow. So Chris plays to his outs, finds them. We're on to game 3.
I mean, and that's really just the power of Underworld Connections there, right? We saw Jared land his, Chris set up the board for Underworld Connections to get in. And Jared couldn't answer it. Jared had his own trump card. He had the turn 5 assemble. He had a turn 6 Elspeth unanswered. Still not enough.
So we saw game 1 pretty much won by a 3-mana enchantment. We saw game 2 won by 2 copies of a possible 3 that he could have had of a 3-mana enchantment. Assemble the Legion, the 5-mana enchantment, was the one we thought was going to take over the game. But it didn't.
You still, as a blue-white player, you still just can't lose the Underworld Connections fight. And, I was saying before that, Duress, Connections, 3 lands is pretty unbeatable. And it's just true. There's not, you can draw all these trump cards you boarded in for the matchup, and you're still an underdog.
So now that we're on the draw, let's have this Lifebane Zombie Desecration Demon argument again.
All right, so Chris is on the draw with Lifebane Zombie Desecration
Now
Demon.
we know he has Assemble.
Yeah, well, if we're wise, we
probably knew, but we didn't know for sure. Now we've seen it. Desecration Demon is real bad now.
I think Lifebane's just better in general.
I agree.
I mean, as you saw that game, Lifebane did a significant... He worked that game.
It saw information and attacked for 6.
Yeah, and that 6 was very necessary for winning.
Absolutely. So Jared, knowing that Lifebanes are going to be in the deck now, does he even bother bringing in the Archangels?
Yeah, does he bother bringing the Archangels? It's a good question. You know, there's a little bit of you just hope it doesn't happen. It depends how you think about, like, how bad you think the matchup is. I have found with blue-white, I just don't like the post-board games very much. Granted, when I play blue-white, I don't have assembles. So I actually just need to board in something. And I board in Archangels, and I just hope they don't lifebane them. If you have assembles, you maybe don't have to do that. Granted, I would still play more of them if I had them. Elspeth, Assemble, Life, those are the ways you beat a game when you're losing to connections, but you really just don't win when they have the connections going. So, I don't know, maybe he leaves them out. I can see that.
Well, we'll find out in Game 3 of Jared Boettcher against Chris VanMeter, Mono Black Devotion against Blue White Red Control. Here in round 8 of the Standard Open in Baltimore.
Yeah, so it's just a real classic matchup here. It's one of the ones, it'll be interesting to see if, this is the last tournament that we're going to see before Born of the Gods, whether or not this matchup is still going to be one of the, the archetypal matches of the format post Born of the Gods.
No pun intended, now that the archetype of imagination and destruction are coming out. That's
maybe it'll be a
good
very
unintentional pun out of you.
Archetypal matchup.
That's right.
Yeah, they're both getting some new tools, and none of the tools that really help them in the mirror. White could play the Cat King. I don't know if he's, that certainly is a card I would like to board in, actually, because...
Against Mono Black?
If you're going to do the whole, I play no creatures, but then surprise, I board in a creature.
Sure.
Like,
that's a good one to bring in. It's like when Hero of Bladehold used to come in out of those weird blue-white decks 2 years ago.
Yeah, or when Hero Bladehold came out of Temperate Steel, they'd be like, surprise, he's not a robot, he's just really good.
Yeah. Or like when you brought in Dark Confidant when you were playing lands or something like that.
Right, so things like that. One of the things that when I was playing this matchup from the blue-white deck is I said, man, how come all my finishers have to cost 5? They're just going to Thought Seize it, and they always would, and 3 is a really good number. A guy that can win the game by himself and costs 3, I would want that card. I don't know if he's not auto in the deck, but he is gonna get play tested. He's a strong consideration.
A bunch of the cards that Mono Black Devotion gets, as we see Chris VanMeter is gonna mulligan to 6 here, in Born of the Gods are not even close to for Blue White Red. They are Bile Blight, and they are Drown in Sorrow, and they are not things for this matchup.
Yeah, no. Black gets better against other decks. I don't know if they get much for this matchup.
I mean, I'll admit, like Blue White Red, by the way, gets Temple of Enlightenment.
Yeah, I've been streaming a lot of Blue White, and I'll even admit when I was looking for a 3-drop creature, I was trying Doxos for a bit. That's bad, by the way.
Is it?
You're wondering.
Is it bad?
Yep.
It's really good in the Holiday Cube.
Okay.
There's a lot less creatures in Holiday Cube than there are in Standard, though.
Yeah, I mean,
you're playing
it
a lot.
Was really bad.
Sure.
Night Veil Spec. I mean, here's the idea: if you have enough Last Breaths, a creature either gets Last Breathed or can't block Doxos. It's a combo.
I see.
That was the idea. It was bad.
I see what you've done.
A bad idea.
Is that a bad idea?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, because then you have to verdict anyway, and then you're like, why am I playing a 2/2? That's
for 3. Why am I playing a Goblin
Gray
Hero?
Ogre. That's bad.
Chris is going to take a look at his 6, shrugs, and decides to keep. He sees, I think he saw 2 Underworld Connections. Maybe it's just the one. It's an Underworld Connections and a fake Underworld Connections in Erebos.
More like the realest Underworld Connections ever. That guy, I originally, when I started playing against him, thought I could board in Pithing Needle and have everything be okay against him. That is not the case. He has to be sphered. His static ability is nightmares for the blue-white red deck.
As we see turn 3 Divination. He also has both of his powerful enchantments in his hand, the Detention Sphere, as well as the Assemble the Legion.
Well, Jared's got to be really happy that he hasn't just gotten his clock cleaned by duresses.
Now, Chris could be sandbagging a duress in Jared's mind because it's only coming down on turn 5.
If he'd
That's
drawn
the real
it
thing
this
you were worried
turn,
about.
well, Jace right now is pretty bad.
That's true.
Detention Sphere would be pretty bad, right? If you have Underworld Connections and your opponent only has 1 Detention Sphere, you'd want to clean that out of the way first.
He does have the Erebos, though. He does not have the discard spell, and guess who's coming to the party?
It's going to be a whole lot of soldiers. I hope you...
Oh, he decides to not play it. So he's going to leave up 4 mana here.
That's weird. It's almost like he doesn't have red.
Oh, I see. We missed, as the play-by-play guy, I missed a very important thing.
Yeah.
Jared Boettcher does not have a red source currently in play.
Ah, that's
pretty frustrating. as he does only have, it looks like 9 red sources in the deck, 3 Temple of Triumph, 4 Steam Vents, and 2 Sacred Foundry. And so this Erebos is going to be able to use the Greed ability to draw a couple of cards.
Yeah, well, Jared's still in a fine spot for now.
Let's see if he can find a red source here. There it is.
There we go. Okay.
What do you think?
If you're Chris,
does he separate?
Oh no, don't do it, Chris. Don't do it. He's just going to take the land.
He's definitely taking the red.
Be observant. See that. Just put the Sacred Foundry by himself.
That would be so good.
You'd be like, the best part is like Jared would look really dejected and be like, yeah, and you take Sacred Foundry.
Chris is going to probably have to find a discard spell here. Finds another Erebos instead.
Well, that's a little legendary, but
I don't think that he can get to the requisite amount of devotion. He has a lot of swamps in his hand, does Chris VanMeter, as he is going to pay 2 more life to dig a little deeper.
Well, Chris's hand is actually, I don't particularly like it, and the one he kept, it had, so you sometimes think the matchups about Erebos and Underworld Connections, and because those are the cards that win games, but my actual theory with this matchup is that it's about Duresses and Thought Seizes in the black player. Like, rather than have a triple Connections hand, I would much rather have a triple Duress hand.
Jared finds Elixir of Immortality on top of his deck. He's probably going to pay 2 life here to be able to play this assemble as soon as he possibly can.
Elixir is a pretty terrible draw in this matchup at any point in the game. It's especially terrible because Chris has an Erebos.
Right.
But
shuffling back in is almost never relevant. You're usually winning with one of your other win conditions. Typically the assemble, if you're winning this matchup.
Post board, I actually, and this is something I would actually think he should be boarding out the Elixir because Assembled Legion will just win a game on its own. The card's really, like I said, it's really bad in the matchup. The only reason you normally keep it in is in case they Heroes Downfall all your Elspeths, and you're like, well, I have to make sure I don't deck myself. But I don't think he's worried about that.
A pair of Night Veil Specters hit the board, and that means Erebos is active, and the 5/7 enters the red zone to drop Jared to 13. Chris also has a Gray Merchant in his hand.
Specters are very devoted to Erebos. Jared has a Supreme Verdict, so I think all is safe.
He's probably using the Supreme Verdict here, but if he doesn't, things could
dead.
get a little awkward. For example, if he keeps up Turn and Burn to be able to take care of the Erebos. He's still just dead to that.
So what if he Turn Burns Erebos right now and Last Breath's a Night Veil? That's the play I'd want to make. And it means I'd get hurt by that Gray Merchant. But I would love to get... No, I'd do it anyway because we have 5 life in a bottle on the table. Yeah, sign me up. I'd Turn Burn the Erebos for sure.
Turn Burn is a card that got a little bit of play, like right when Theros got spoiled because there were 5 indestructible creatures in the set that are huge. And people are like, man, Turn Burn is going to be all over the place, turning gods into weirds. As you can see there on the left, the uncommon from Gate Crash. It hasn't really. The red-blue just didn't really pick up. I've seen splashes in the mono-blue Devotion deck of every other color except for red, and I've seen the Perforos Devotion deck splash pretty much every color except for blue.
I'm not sure every deck can play it. That's the thing. But all right, so he has Turn Burn. It looks like he's committed to the Turn Burn Last Breath line.
It's unquestionably a powerful Magic card, but we just haven't seen a lot of it, and it's only a 1-of in Jared's deck.
Well,
but he can afford to run it because he's running a Sphinx's Revelation deck where you're going to find all your 1-ofs.
The thing is, it's a red card first and a blue card second. Like, you can't play it in mono blue Devotion because the blue ability is not good enough. You can play it in a red deck, which is splashing blue. If there was red splash blue Devotion, I think they'd play a Turn Burn. But the deck, red will do it with green, they'll play it with white, but the blue one hasn't really shown up.
So, if you're Chris, you see 5 mana separated away from 2 mana.
That's a little bit of a tell.
Do you see that if you're Chris?
If
I'm playing,
don't do that
see
with your
that.
lands.
Yeah, just keep your lands all together, guys. Don't try to get fancy.
Don't stack your land. If you're gonna stack your lands, you should tap and play the card you're stacking.
And so I think Chris sees it, and
this is a lot of devotion.
This is a lot of devotion. This is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 devotion to black, which would send Jared to 2 if Turn and Burn and Last Breath didn't exist. Now, the 2 lands that were separated, by the way, were 2 blue-white lands, so he might be playing around Celestial Flare because he's playing a pre-combat.
Yeah, Turn Burn will hit Erebos. Well, so that brings it down to a paltry 10 devotion to black.
That's right, and still gonna kill Jared on the board right now.
Yeah, I mean, we know about the Last Breath. This is all happening. Yeah, I think Chris is just checking to make sure, hey, is this still die? Yep.
Well,
okay.
is he targeting both of the halves with turn burn? Because he could turn one and burn something else. But he decides to turn burn to get rid of it immediately to get the Erebos off the board.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no real advantage. I was going to say he could burn, he could turn it and then last breath it if he wanted. There's no point in that.
So he's got last breath. He could activate an elixir.
I think he's got a last breath here. If
he could last breath his own creature to gain more life.
If he last breath
but that's not going to gain any more life than
that's
Chris
actually,
would be draining.
Hold on. You're onto something there. It gains 4. No, it's a drain of 5 to hit the Night Veil. If it was less, that actually would be correct because I'm pretty sure Jared's playing the Supreme Verdict next turn no matter how this ends up.
And keep in mind, Chris still has a Mutavault and an Underworld connection, so no matter what, Chris very excited to hit that Supreme Verdict right there off the top.
Revelation. I mean, the exciting part is that Jared didn't draw. That means Jared doesn't get it.
Exactly right, which is huge as he has 8 lands in play. Not gaining 5 life and not drawing 5 cards is quite a big deal. Even if Jared casts Supreme Verdict here, Chris still has the Mutavault and still has the Underworld connections.
Yeah, Jared has the Supreme Verdict. He has the last breath for the Mutavault. He has the 5 life from the bottle, but he doesn't have an answer to Underworld connections. We're going to get to see that race once again of Underworld connections versus Assemble. And I'm going to go ahead and say once again that Underworld wins that race.
It's going to be close because Chris is going to gain the 4 life from the last breath that Jared still has. Jared's only at 4, so he's going to need to find a way to survive literally anything Chris draws, and Chris is drawing 2 cards a turn. But all of the cards in Jared's deck, maybe not all, most of the cards in Jared's deck are higher impact than the cards in Chris's deck. And also, Chris is going to be pinging himself for 1 every single time, and then the Assemble will just start taking over.
All right, so the damage comes in, 3 from the soldiers, and all right, step 1, creature swept away, done.
Sweep the board. So we've got 4 mana up after Supreme Verdict. See where Jared goes from here.
I mean, his mana's pretty much spoken for this turn. 2 of it's for the elixir, 2 of it's for the last breath. He doesn't have to elixir this turn. It does improve his draws enough that you probably just do, especially because I think Chris is going to make that second Erebos and be like, oh, well, better gain life while I can.
And the other 2 cards in Jared's hand are lands. So
yeah, Duress drawn by VanMeter. That's good. Last breath
real
now
good.
has no target.
Wow. That's going to snag a last breath. Wow.
That
changes a lot, actually. Seeing that the Emperor has no close, Chris can go about his turn as he pleases, trying to find a win this turn.
You said he has another Erebos, right?
He does have another Erebos.
That's huge. I was going to say Jared can still top deck a Sphinx's Revelation, but now not so much.
In comes the Mutavault.
Down to 2, and boom.
There's Big Papa Erebos, God of the Dead. No more life gain for you. In response, we're going to go to 7. Shuffle it all back in.
And with one fewer Revelation in the deck, too.
So he's doing that in response to the Erebos.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I think he did it in response. Okay.
Yes, he did. I think that there was a spectator asking when that Erebos was going on.
Yeah, and like, no, he's smart. He did it in response. It's not end step.
He figured it out. He read the magic card. So yeah, I think that certainly with that top deck Duress, especially because of the discard spells in Chris's deck that I wasn't taking into account, of which he has 7 after board, and he has another Thoughtseize in his hand. I would much rather be on the Underworld Connection side of things than the Assemble the Legion side, even with 2 counters going up to 3 this turn. Oh, he didn't.
No, I think he did it on end step, yeah, and then he said, sorry, you don't gain the life.
Wow.
A little bit of a
misplay. We'll see if it comes back to haunt him as Jared top decks a land here.
Well, plays the untapped island and passes back. That's all he can do. What he has to hope is that Chris doesn't draw a Gray Merchant or a Flyer.
Yeah, the problem here is that Chris has just drawn 2 cards a turn.
He sure is. He can draw more if he wants to. With Erebos, he can draw many cards. As soon as he hits a Gray Merchant, things are bad.
It's game over from there.
He drew a Desecration Demon. That doesn't matter.
That doesn't matter at this point. So we found the answer. We kept in at least 1. I would imagine there's more than 1.
Well, when we were going through the card for card swap, we knew there'd be we only found 3 of them to side out.
Sure.
So I think there's at least 1 left, unless you want to play Doomblade, or Dark Betrayal, which I don't.
Those seem pretty bad.
Those seem bad. You could Fricas Cure one of the soldier tokens.
You could do that.
That's...
Or a Mutavault if you anticipated the blue-white control deck having Mutavault, but typically you sacrifice having Mutavault for the third color in these three colors.
You still find perk. They usually play 2.
Okay.
I mean, you're right. It makes your mana worse.
We saw earlier that a couple of the blue-white control decks had 3, even 4 when I was walking around the room.
That's true.
Jared, it looks like, only does have the 2 Mutavaults.
Probably can't play more than 2 in Jared's deck.
But with only really 1 target that's any good, you don't want to trade a card for a third of an activated ability against an Elspeth.
Right.
So we'll see where Chris goes from here. Probably going to start paying some life to be able to try to bury Jared under some card advantage. He finds a pair of Desecration Demons.
Well, this would be good. Each Desecration Demon functionally takes a counter off Assemble, which is fine.
It's not exactly where you want to be. Chris is going to just keep on digging. Finds
More demons.
another demon. So he can remove all 3 counters from the Desecration Demon if he wants over the next 2 turns.
Sure. Yeah, so what's Assemble do against all these demons? Well, he gets to eat 1. Erebos. So right now, one has to trump Erebos, 1 has to trump each demon. You know, there's a lot of trump blockers out here.
And so Erebos is able to attack, but
I think
Chris
he missed
decides
it.
not
I think
to.
Chris missed that Erebos was a creature. Like,
But he's also,
Oh,
he doesn't really want to attack into all that open mana, as Jared did actually top deck a Celestial Flare.
Oh, you're probably right. So the scary part for Chris is that he actually has to find an answer reasonably soon. Right now, so Jared is at 7 soldiers at the moment. So 7 will next turn become 12, and on the following turn will become 18. And
That's many.
well, that's Chris's life total. I'm assuming he's going to use at least some connections or Ereboses.
In the meantime, sure.
Right. So it's not next turn. So in 2 turns, Jared will have a lethal attack. Chris has to kill him before that.
Jared's going to keep all of his 1/1s back, not sacrificing anything to the Desecration Demon during the attacks.
Gray Merchant? No, it's a
No.
Night Veil Spectre.
Night Veil
That
Spectre.
actually could be lethal. If he has he has to have the wherewithal to play around the Celestial Flare when he attacks with it.
I'm pretty sure he does.
I agree. I suspect he will make the play.
Underworld Connections drops down to 15, and guess what we found?
Oh, that was the card we needed. Let's Thought Seize to make sure this doesn't get
Coast is
countered.
clear, and
that's
there's
gonna do it.
Gary. Gary for the Fireball. Jared shaking his head a little bit at the at what he might perceive to be a pretty okay matchup. What do you think about this matchup in general?
I mean,